What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex. In this video, I want to talk about Rocksteady's next game. I want to talk about, again, what it could be and really when we're going to see it, when we're finally going to be able to see it, and when we can expect for this game to come out. And I've kind of talked about each of the three branches, these really big, rumored, you could call it, but very highly anticipated games from these three developers, all owned by Warner Brothers. We have Rocksteady's game, which could be a Justice League game. It could be something else, but I really, they've confirmed, or at least they've said, that it is not a Superman game. Now, that doesn't, I think, take away entirely from it. Game developers lie all the time. It could still be a Superman game, but I feel like a coming together of all of these DC characters would be the number one thing I think we would expect for them. We got that. We have Warner Brothers Montreal, again, making two games. Could be a Batman Arkham game. It seems pretty likely that the closest one to being done is an Arkham game. And we also have the studio that is making the Harry Potter Magic Awakened game, also from Warner Bros. So we have three really big games. We've already talked about the other two in the past video, so if you guys want to go back in the channel over the last week, I've talked about both of those games. Rocksteady, I feel like they're the hardest to talk about when it comes to the three of these games. Because although Warner Bros., their studios, has a history of these leaks and so many things getting out about these games, Rocksteady seems to kind of actually be immune this time from that cycle. And it just makes it kind of hard to talk about. It's easier to kind of predict and discuss, and especially because it's kind of different things we're thinking of when it comes to this Harry Potter game. Obviously, it's so different. It's an RPG in the Harry Potter universe, and yes, we know that the Batman Arkham game is being made from Warner Bros. Montreal, or at least heavily leaked, but we don't know what that second game is, and it just, it's just easier to kind of talk about. Rocksteady, though, is very difficult because they've been working on whatever this game is for 4 years now, and I don't think this is a situation like a game like Ghost of Tsushima from Sucker Punch, owned by Sony. And if you guys have watched those videos I've talked about Ghost of Tsushima in the past. It's been so long since the past game, and it's also been so long for Warner Brothers Montreal since Arkham Origins, where it's I feel like those games definitely have been canceled. And especially with Montreal studio, we know that there's been some canceled games. There's been at least 2 canceled games out of that studio. Rumor had it they were making a Suicide Squad game that got, a little, it didn't get super far in production, but it was canceled, and also a rumored Wonder Woman game. So, there were some games that have been canceled. Same thing with Sucker Punch. I truly believe they were working on something before Ghost of Tsushima, because when you have such a long gap in between games in your development time, normally something had to have happened to make that, happen. Now, for Rocksteady, it's been 4 years. I feel like they really have just been working on the next game for those entire 4 years, and I feel like Rocksteady is that kind of studio that will announce the game and it will release very soon after the game gets announced. I've been saying that in the past as well. But again, they run into a very sticky situation. Same thing, and I've talked about this with those other two games, is you have a problem in terms of your announcement, and you have a problem in terms of when this game releases. Now, again, Rocksteady, I feel like, is the studio that's going to announce it, and the game will release shortly after. Again, Arkham Knight, it was announced at E3. It was supposed to come out that fall. It got delayed then till June. So yes, it did come out a full year after it was announced, but it wasn't planned that way. That wasn't what they wanted. When it comes to these three games, so you can't announce them all in very close proximity to each other. You have to give them time to breathe. If you announce a Rocksteady game, say it's a Justice League game, I don't think you can announce that very close to a Harry Potter game, because I feel like they're going to take away from each other, and especially you can't release those games. I feel like maybe Warner Bros. Montreal is still looked at as that kind of stepchild, that kind of put down studio where it's well, that game I guess could come out close to a Rocksteady or a Harry Potter game. It could. It wouldn't be a good idea. I think it would hurt it, but it could. But especially a Rocksteady game, you don't put that close to a Harry Potter. So when they announce a Harry Potter, when they announce a Rocksteady, is really reliant on the other studio and the other game. And when they come out, is reliant on the other studio and other game, because you can't have them competing against each other. And they're two completely different studios. They're different people working on these games. It's very tough. And another thing is, with Montreal continuing continuously just not announcing anything, it really is making a lot of people believe that Rocksteady's game could actually be the furthest along. They've had less time to work on it than the Montreal team, and they have less people working at their studio, but it seems like that game is further along than the Montreal game, whatever that that Arkham game is. So the question is, and again, I've talked about this in the other videos, or in the other videos about these games, is when it comes to next fall 2020, very tough because it's the next generation of consoles. It's when we're going to start switching. Is a Rocksteady game kind of a launch game that you would expect to be in that time period? I don't know. When I think of it, I think of, when you think of jumping generations, the next generation, you think that obviously the Sony and Microsoft, they're going to have the exclusives. We know Halo Infinite. We know there's going to probably be a few Xbox exclusives. We know Sony will probably have like a Horizon Zero Dawn very, very close, if not at launch. Maybe The Last of Us Part 2, Ghost of Tsushima. Maybe Ghost of Tsushima gets pushed kind of to like it comes out on PS4 and PS5. They'll have games. They'll be exclusive games. And then in terms of third-party support, you would probably expect, all the sports games to be able to make that jump. You would expect a Call of Duty to be able to make it on the next generation. Assassin's Creed, the next Assassin's Creed definitely seems like it's going to be next gen. So you expect all those. But when you think of the other studios, I don't really think you think of Rocksteady and say, what if a PS5 and Xbox Scarlet come out and there is a Rocksteady game, there's a Justice League game on it within like the first month? Do people really expect that to happen? And, I'm not saying that as like a mocking thing. It's like, do people actually think that that could happen? Because you know what? It really could. It could very well be a thing where next E3 they announce it and say, you know what? It's coming out in November. It's coming out on next generation consoles. Because at this point, you're working on it for 4 years, and I don't know how you can work on it for 4 years but also make it a next-gen game, because the development kits for the next-gen weren't given out to these studios up until like a few months ago or even like a year ago. So they must have been working on the early, framework of it, and then they could kind of port it or bring it to the next generation of consoles. I assume that's how they did it, but at this point, with the fact that it's not been announced yet, and the fact that we still don't know anything about it yet, it needs to be next generation. It's going to be next generation. Unless this gets announced in December and comes out in June, and then it's like, all right, well, you had one game on the PS4 and Xbox One on this current generation. That was Arkham Knight. Arkham City and Arkham Asylum were on the last generation. You had Arkham Knight, and then you spent the rest of the life cycle of the current generation making a game just to have it come out right before the next generation. That doesn't sound right. It would sound more, kind of what is actually happening if they announce it. It comes out and it is a next generation game. It's for next generation consoles. It comes out within the first, 2 to 4 months of the next gen, and then they're able to work on another game and have that be out in like 3 to 4 years, still in the life cycle of PS5 and Xbox Scarlet. And again, that's what a lot of these studios I feel like are going to be doing. And these games that we're going to be talking about, games like a next BioShock game, games like a possible Bully 2 or GTA 6, these games are going to be the ones that gets released early on in the next generation life cycle, which is a good thing, because then we can get another game more polished, with them being able to take advantage of the next generation consoles. But with this not being announced at E3, it kind of needs to be next generation, and I don't know when they're going to announce it. I feel like a team like Rocksteady is a big enough company, right? And whatever game they're making is going to be massive. And people know who Rocksteady is. People know the Arkham games. They can announce this game whenever they want. It can be a Game Informer cover. It doesn't even have to be. They could just announce a trailer one day and say, here's our, or just a random Monday, and they can say, this is our game, and here's everything you need to know about it. Games do it all the time. Games much smaller than their game is going to be have done it. So they could definitely do that. The question is just when. I feel like E3, while again, and I say in every video, I feel like it is dying. It's not what it used to be. It's not that center stage for games like it used to be. But I feel like next year at E3, with the spotlight really being on these next generation consoles, it would be a good time for Rocksteady to show up and say, here's what we've been working on for 5 years. It's coming out this fall, and it's coming out on next generation consoles. They can pair it with a conference. Obviously, Cyberpunk showed up at Xbox's or Microsoft's conference, and multiplayer being published by Warner Bros. So it's possible they could come at Microsoft's 2020 E3 or even Sony if Sony goes next year. There's a lot that can be done, but I feel like this is an announcement that we're going to have to just wait. I feel like when it comes to the Harry Potter game and Warner Bros. Montreal game, it's a little bit more maddening and like frustrating what happened to those games and when are we going to get them, and that I want them sooner than later. Rocksteady, I feel like just because I truly believe in my gut that they're going to announce it and it'll be released within 6 months of the announcement, I'm not as worried. And I think that we will get it next year, hopefully. I feel like 2020 will be the year. But I'm not, and then another thing is I'm not expecting it in between. Like I'm in my mind right now, I'm putting a halt to a Rocksteady announcement, and I'm not going to expect it before E3. When it comes to Harry Potter, when it comes to this Warner Bros. Batman Arkham game, I'm expecting it. I want it literally tomorrow or the next day, or every day I can wake up and say, I want this announcement this day. It's a little bit different for Rocksteady. But guys, I want to hear what you think in the comments below. What do you think happened with Rocksteady's game? Where do you think it is in development? What do you think they're making? And when do you think it's coming out? Let me know all those answers. Make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel podcast. Now hit that bell icon so you guys know when these videos go up. And thank you as always for watching. And I hope to see you on the next video.